she needs to move forward.
I think I have
Imagine if Helena and Brianna were asking me these questions.
Yeah.
It'd mean more, like, to me, because it's, like, urgently, like...
Oh, yeah, because you want them to know, right?
Yeah.
Here, wait a minute. I'm going to get... Oh, I really lost it. Where's the file?
Yeah. Do you need the background dimmed a little bit more?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm going to try a little bit. Let's see the balance.
That better?
Yeah, it is. Juliana, can you look at me for a second? There we go. All right, beautiful.
Can I fix this? Because this bothers me.
This?
Yeah. It's upside down.
The upside downness of it?
Yeah.
All right. So you've narrated us through Act 1, but we have not gotten to the point of where you were standing on the bluff. And you are looking out over what happened to Standing Rock and the insight that you had when you realized that the treaties give the Lakota the right to this land and this water. Can you walk me through how you got there from being a Standing Rock? How did you get to the realization of the treaties and Lakota owning the water?
Okay. So for me, realizing that we not only had spiritual right and realizing that we not only had spiritual right to this land and to this water. It was that day when on the front line, standing there with Sarah, and she was saying, who are you? Do you know whose land you're standing on? And to me, I grew up in the Lakota education system. We are always taught about our treaties from, I think middle school. They start telling us about our rights as Indigenous people. They teach us about the Black Hills and how they were stolen from us. We're shown maps in school about what our land used to look like and how over the years, it just got smaller and smaller. So that knowledge of the treaties has always been with me, but I didn't realize it was at that moment on the front lines that I realized that those treaties were real, that they mattered, that we could use them, that we had legal documentation to be on that land. And they were the ones that wrote those treaties. That the people that we were standing up against, their ancestors wrote those treaties.
Federal government.
Federal government. LaDonna Allard says in their language, the U.S. government in their language wrote the rules. They wrote the rules to the game, and now they want it to retract that. Now they want it to say all that's...
Sorry, it's changing cards. Give it a second. That was important.
You know what to do?
It's not changing automatically. No, because CFAS-B.
Yeah, it's sheer, I believe. Can you read that?
Yes, that's left. Saying it cannot switch. Is there nothing in the second? What's that?
Here, open it. Let's take out CFAS 1. You might have to format CFAS 2.
Make sure you don't format the card.
So I'm taking out CFAS 1.
No, can't switch. So I need to see what's on the second one.
What you've been saying about the redirecting, redoing the lines, and all the maps and all the time you just reline them.
Yeah.
They create the
Format.
treaty
nothing on B.
draw a
Right,
line
it just
and
needs to be
then
formatted.
You sure?
go
You
back
want to
on
check
their
that
word.
this is...
It's back on.
They erase the line and redraw the line.
Yeah, I hate doing that.
Gotta make sure.
Says my stuff.
Yeah, here, put it in A.
focus on communication.
Format it. You want to look at this one? Why? It has no clips.
Well, you have that on the sound anyway.
Be locked for some reason.
Yeah, they have a sign on.
Don't
Picture of Bolsonaro hugging the policeman who killed Mariana.
What? No way.
Not locked.
Is that for reals?
C is locked.
Like, is this real life?
I haven't seen the picture yet, but that's what they're saying.
Do you think it's photoshopped?
This is
Like, is he that
Slightly
really that gully to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, I murder people?
tighten it, but you want to make sure it's level.
I can't really see in the dark. Thank you.
You guys got to get the tripod with the LED light bubble.
Yeah.
That's the one I got.
Really?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's
That
cool.
existed when I got this.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Invest in it because
Alright.
it's a cool little nerdy thing that
That's
I
awesome.
love. Yeah. Especially in the dark, filming horror films.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here you go. You use this for your audio. 'Cause
Okay.
I don't know that this is going through stuff.
Pretty dark.
That's a bad texture.
Juliana, can you scooch forward slightly towards me? Okay, great.
It's supposed to be March.
So tell me about the treaties again. Let's go back to the treaties and what you were saying. You were really getting to a crucial point because you were saying the U.S. made the rules of the game and then.
Yeah. So the U.S. government wrote the rules of the game that we were playing. They wrote the treaty. And my ancestors signed it, but they tricked them into signing it. The Lakota people didn't speak English. We had translators. We didn't really fully understand what we were signing. And the U.S. government used that piece of paper, and they still use it, to occupy land that belonged to us. They wrote the rules and they decided to retract their own rules. They decided to erase the lines and go back on their own language, their own legal documents that they made up. Yeah.
So tell us again about how that related to Standing Rock, why that became real to you at Standing Rock.
So for me, it was just something that was taught in history class. It was something that was like, oh, your ancestors signed these papers and this is why we're here today on this reservation. But then that was when I finally realized on the front lines that day that I was arrested, that they mattered, that piece of paper mattered. What was signed and said in that treaty, we could use it now. And in that treaty, they say that we have water rights for as long as the grass grows and the wind blows. We have legal rights to that water in their own language, in the U.S. government's federal documents. And although they tricked us into signing it, we did sign it. So now we have a paper trail. We could be using that. Let's utilize that.
So wonderful. Take me to the moment on the bluff where you're looking out over that empty basin and why that was so emotional for you. What happened between the moment of getting arrested from Standing Rock and where we are right now in the narrative to the moment where you were standing on that basin looking out over those empty plains?
So now fast forward to now. Where are we at now as Indigenous people? As when I returned there, that was the first time that I had been back since the movement. It was the first time that I returned, and to see it empty and to see how desolate it was and to know how beautiful it was, that there at one point in time was 10,000 people there camping and connecting and praying, and for one beautiful movement. We all were moving as one cell. We were all moving as one entity, and it was beautiful. And when I returned, I was emotionally moved because it was gone. It wasn't physically there. And I was there with LaDonna, and I was realizing that although it wasn't physically there, that it exists in our hearts. It exists in my memories. Like, I will be able to tell my children that I was a part of the largest stand for water in American history. That I fought with my spirituality, with my prayers, that I laid my body down on the line for water. And that's beautiful to me, because my ancestors did that for me with the Wounded Knee Massacre. Like, they laid their bodies down so that we can continue on as the Lakota people, as indigenous people of America. That's what moves me. Seeing those images of my own ancestors being massacred, the U.S. government knew that they needed to document it to scare us. They wanted to scare us to know. They knew already the power of image and narrative. And they took photos of my people dead in the winter in the snow. They already knew and understood that if we scare the Lakota people, we take photos of it and we put it on our newspapers and set this as an example. This is what happens when you stand up to the U.S. government. But to me, it was empowering, because I knew that my people, what we believed in, was so important that they were willing to die for it. They were willing to lay their bodies on the line so that we could exist, so that we could continue on in modern day society. They weren't willing to be wiped out. They said, no, we are here and we will always be here. And what we do now is for our grandchildren's, and it goes on and on. That's what inspired me, because they did it for me. I wanted to do it for my grandchildren.
Why did you paint your hand blue?
I painted my hand blue to symbolize water. I painted my hand because I wanted to show people that we're only as powerful as the stories that we carry inside ourselves. My grandma and my family, we always talk about how we carry our ancestors in our hands. All of our hands are the same. These hands, like, it's really crazy, because you line up my grandma and my auntie and everybody's hands, my little cousins and my sisters, all of our hands look the same. We have physical evidence that our ancestry runs through our hands. These hands are the hands of my grandmother, my great-great-grandmother. She had these same hands, and she survived through all of that, and it was passed down through us, passed down through generations. And I want it to signify that you can't take it away from us. So I painted my hand blue to represent water, and to let people know that you can't break us, whether we die, whether you kill all of us. It's a circle. It's a continuous circle. And what I do today will inspire my grandchildren. It's going to inspire people around the world to not give up, to keep fighting.
Why didn't you give up after Standing Rock? What are you doing today? How did you start a quest?
It's hard to ask somebody why they don't give up, because coming from the reservation, it's really hard. It's a struggle. Like every single day when you wake up, I struggled with depression. And when I wasn't creating something or doing something for what I thought was the greater good or to help my community, that's a hard question. Like, what keeps you going? And for me, it was just my family, that love that we're taught from a young age. Is the women in my family, we're a matriarchal society. Lakota culture is a matriarchal society. That's what keeps me going, is that prayer and that love and that electricity that we share with one another through water. And sometimes living in this modern day society, I forget about it. Sometimes I forget about that connection, and that's when I become depressed. When I become isolated, or when I feel like I'm not doing something for someone else and I'm not exchanging love and energy, that's when you feel like you don't have a purpose.
Did you get depressed after Standing Rock ended?
Yeah, everybody got depressed. Everyone was depressed after Standing Rock, because we had seen what we could be as a nation of people. We had seen really how we could decolonize ourselves and return back to living how we once were before colonization, before the U.S. government had contact with us. And so everyone went back to their jobs. All the people that went and came from all over the country, they all went back home. And we were all separated again, and we weren't moving as that one entity, that one cell anymore. And then we were by ourselves again. We got isolated in these boxes, and we had to go back to our grids and our lines, and we weren't living in a circle anymore. So people got depressed. And I mean, even like Dean, he talks about being depressed, and it was a really big issue, because we didn't feel a sense of purpose anymore. We weren't together anymore.
So what did you decide to do about it?
Well, I continued with what I knew best, was with art. I continued utilizing my art to educate people about what happened, and whether my art looked like music or film or photos, or, I was trying to figure out ways to get that feeling back, that feeling of inspiration, the feeling of being whole again. And so I continued on playing music for a while, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't, I want to be able to reach more people. I want to be able to utilize all my skills as an artist with sound, music, images, photography. And I was like, that's through film. It's a culmination of all the things that I love. That's what makes me happy. I'm going to try doing film. How am I going to reach Indigenous youth? Everyone's stuck on their phones. I realized everyone was on Instagram and Facebook, and I realized it was the future. The future is in telling our own narrative, I realized that there's no Indigenous filmmakers, there's no Indigenous actors. There are some, but it's just, we need more. There's not a lot of us, so we need to be the ones telling the story. We need to be the ones in front of the camera, behind the camera, doing the sound. We need to tell our own stories.
Do you want to talk about the Resistance?
Yeah, sure. So I started this series called the Resistance series. And with that, it began from just one idea. I wanted to show support to Indigenous women that normally don't receive support, that are doing big things in their community. And so I created this, I don't know how to say it. I had women nominate one another and email me a bio and a photo. And I said, you nominate someone within your community that you think is awesome and brilliant and beautiful, that inspires you, and send me their bio. And it made these women feel good because they didn't know who nominated them. They didn't know. And then I utilized my following that I had gathered from music, and I started posting these women on my social media, and and I would tag them in it, and they got all these likes, and they started feeling supported, and they started feeling appreciated. And then in turn, if they had been nominated, they needed to nominate another woman. And so it became this network of beautiful women who were doing big things in their community, nominating one another, supporting, and that doesn't exist. And so
When you were arrested, what was it you dedicated your arrest to? Do you remember that?
yeah. So when I was arrested, we made statements about why are you doing this? And I said, I'm doing this for the people. I'm doing this for the land, the water. I want to say prayers for the land that I'm standing on. I prayed in my Lakota language. I said, Tunkashla, I want to say prayers for where we are. And I was nervous. I was really nervous. And I never did public speaking before or acted or anything. I was just going off complete feeling and instinct.
You said you were doing it for the women.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
No, see? No, never watched it.
Let me see if I can find it. Well, actually, it's in the cut. You were.
I was scared as fuck.
Maybe why is Lakota message so important now?
Wait, let's finish this thought.
Yeah.
You were scared when you got arrested.
Yeah, so when I was afraid when I got arrested, and I had said that I was doing this for the women and the children, the land and the people. And it was important for me because the women are going to be, my grandma always says, the women are the backbone of our nation. They're going to be the ones that carry on. They're the ones that have the babies. They're the ones, we can't exist without one another.
How did you go from starting this network of women? So you definitely did sort of connect that to the matriarchy and try and get out of the depression through that incredible connection. But then how did you get from there to being on this journey to try and figure out what really actually did happen to the water? Which is what we're doing the film about.
What did you pray for when you went into the swim lodge?
When? Wait, I'm confused.
So what I'm trying
I'm sorry, I was like, I'm thinking about this Resistance series. And
Yeah, because it was almost
Can you scooch
standing
forward,
off
please?
of Birchwood.
yeah,
It was a continuation of standing off.
like I wanted to say that a little bit more before
Go ahead.
So, to bring myself out of that depression, I created the Resistance series, and it was like a virtual catalog of what happened at Standing Rock. People supporting one another and nominating one another and reconnecting with each other. and I realized the power of that, doing it through social media and almost creating a catalog of everybody. And it was beautiful. And it was the only way that I knew how to feel that feeling again, because I was really depressed at that time, and it made me feel good to make other women feel good.
How did you start this quest? We're about to go into Act 2 after this, and Act 2 is going to be you looking for what happened to the water. You're going to go to the source of the water. You're going to follow the source of the water. You're going to realize about the fracking and what's getting injected into the water. So how did you get to a point where you decided to take action and use film to go investigate what actually happened to the water?
Yeah, so I had always dabbled in photography and in film because I love taking photos. I love images and narratives. I like to write. I like to tell stories, and it was always there, and I didn't like put all of that together and be like, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker. Like, it was just gradually over time, and then I was playing music, and I was like, oh, I want to make a music video to go along with this song. Like, how do I do that? And so it was just all organic, and teaching myself and Googling, like, how do you make a storyboard? How do you write a script? How do you press record on the camera? How do you light people? And it was, I just got inspired, and I start watching all these things, and so, it wasn't just like a decision. It just happened to me gradually.
But why figure out what's in the water? Why go on this quest to figure out what's in the water? What's being hidden? What's the secret?
So after Standing Rock and seeing everybody, how they were recording it, how they were documenting it, I realized that we were all there asking one question: what's happening to the water? What's happening to the water? Over and over, and no one was answering our question. That was our main question as Lakota people. What's happening to the water? Like, and no one got the answers. No one on the other side, whether that was with the oil company, whether that was with the police officers, no one could answer our questions. And I realized, as an Indigenous filmmaker, we could go and film it. We could go find the answers. We actually don't need them. I want to go show the people what's happening to the water through images. You are not telling me using your words I'm going to show people visually what's happening to the water.
Great. So to me, that kicks off Act 2. John, is there anything else we should ask before we stop on the Saturday?
I wanted to know we got to a point where we touched on why it's important to have Indigenous filmmakers now, but what specifically is important about that? Is there something in your teaching that you want to bring to other people? Like
Why do you need a voice?
So historically, our narrative has always been controlled by the oppressor. And in order to tell our side of the story, we need to be in charge of it. We need to be the ones behind and in front of the camera. It's important for us to tell this story because everything that you read in your history books is wrong. We need to be able to create a digital encyclopedia for ourselves as Indigenous people. We're in the future. You know, we got films like Black Panther and all these things going on that the Indigenous voice is missing. It's so important for us to be the ones to tell our own story. We can't be silenced anymore. Our voices need to be heard because we matter.
What does it feel like to be called a savage or an indigenous jihadist, terrorist? Is that kind of the same thing? What happens to indigenous people? How are you seen from the oppressor's point of view?
So we're seen from the oppressor's point of view. From the oppressor's point of view, we've always been given negative connotations through names like the savage, the noble savage, red skin. And if you look at me, like, I don't consider myself a savage. I don't consider my mom, my grandma. We're very highly educated people. We know we're living in the modern day society. And these people are so caught up on what their ancestors created. They're afraid of us because they're afraid of the unknown, but they don't realize that they could come down to the reservation and they can hang out, and that we would welcome them with open arms exactly how my ancestors welcomed everybody else. We're not hostile people. We're not redskins. We're not Pocahontases. We're not savages. And we're people. We're human beings.
How do you think they tried to silence you?
The oppressors tried to silence us by killing us, by generational trauma, by genocide. They literally tried to wipe out the Lakota people, every last single one of us. The U.S. government tried to kill all of us, but they couldn't. It's our spirit that you can't kill. You can't fight what you can't see. And my people know how to harness that. We know how to pray, and we know how to love, and we know about compassion. How does an oil company or how does an army fight against what it can't see?
You know, Custer couldn't find the Lakota people.
Mm-hmm.
Want to say that?
What year was that? 18?
1876, and he was supposed to occupy that land, but he couldn't find it. He couldn't.
Yeah, we're playing hide and seek.
But that's a whole.
That's a whole story.
That's a whole story.
The one beat that I think
The
we
only way
don't
to
have on
find
film
was
is
by
that
killing
she's
the
taking
buffalo.
active steps.
Mm-hmm.
Spell her story. Educate herself. Get the tools.
Right. So how did you decide to seize the tools to tell your own story and become a filmmaker and go on this journey?
Like, what do you mean? How did I get?
He means film school.
You're at film school now. You're developing the power to tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have.
Can you take us through that decision to go to film school?
And how you did it.
Sort of seize your narrative.
Yeah. When I seen the power of being able to tell our own story, I was like, I need to go back to film school. I need to return to film school to educate myself on what the industry is doing and using. How is the industry? I didn't just want to be, I wanted to be able to learn from the best and be the best, because I wanted to produce quality images. Like I had, a shitty camera, and I could be filming with my iPhone or whatever, but I want it to be able to cinematically tell the stories of our people and do it to the best of my capabilities. And so I was like, I want to go back to school. I want to learn for reals how to do it, how to tell our stories on the big screen, how to reach the masses.
Do you feel like your people succeeded in Standing Rock in winning the image war? Or telling the narrative war? Did that inspire you?
Yeah. So with the Standing Rock movement, people always say that we lost, or that we lost because the pipeline eventually ended up going underneath the river. But to me, I don't think that we lost at all, because we won the narrative war. We were able to tell our story through images, through film, through music. We got our word out. We got the word out that we are still here, that we were still fighting. And it went globally. We reached people all over the world. And it was so beautiful to hear people from different parts of the world say, Mini Wachoni, water is life, a Lakota word. That's beautiful. We got people all over the world to say, Mini Wachoni. We won the narrative war. We won. And we inspired people all over the globe.
But you didn't totally win. I mean, that's why you're doing this, right?
No, I think that we won. I think we won because they were on the wrong side of history. And they were on the wrong side of the line that they drew.
Wait a second. Are you saying you think, because I think what you're saying at the end of this film is you will win. Because the fight continues. This film is part of the fight. I don't think the fight is over, do you?
No, the fight is never over. It's never going to be over. There's always going to be a resource or something at stake. And that's why films like this are important. That's why people like you and me were important in the movement, because there will always be a fight somewhere. And you're going to have to set down what you believe and set down like what you believe is right, and pick up your prayer and go off of instinct, go off what your heart tells you.
And in the end of the day, in this fight over water, who will win?
The fight for water is so, I don't know. Let's see. In the end, Mother Nature will win. Mother Nature will always win. We're just humans here, living with Mother Nature, and water will continue on without us. And if we don't fight for water now, then we'll cease to exist. So I don't really believe that anyone truly wins. No one will truly win unless we take the time to pray with water and to appreciate it. We will all lose if we don't start working together now.
Brava. All right. We don't have any more lights, so.
That was pretty.
That was awesome. Thank you very much. That was great. Also, you want to call this one water as well. You have a good idea for that title.
One life, holy water.
Holy water.
I have tape on.
Oh, letter.
Did it come off?
That hurt.
Very
That
powerful
was
stuff.
hard.
Yeah.
It was hard, but it was beautiful what you said. You said many beautiful things.
Yeah.
Okay, good, because
I know you suffered. And the hardest thing is to talk into camera.
No.